Some of you are going to think differently of me after this video. So I've been making videos online for about 10 years now, most of them covering poetry and short stories and novels, things like that as Strip Cover Lit. And if you know me from there, if you've followed me since then, I don't know that I have ever shown this side of myself on the internet, period, with the whole question of UFOs. This is something that I go way back with. This was my stuff as a child. This was what I did. I had books of paranormal this and supernatural that, and it was really just what got me through so much time. But yesterday, there was an interview that came across my timeline on YouTube, or my feed, I guess it is, and it was Tucker Carlson and Michael Shellenberger. And Tucker Carlson and Michael Shellenberger, say what you want about those two. Maybe you like them, maybe you don't, maybe you appreciate them, maybe you don't, maybe you hate them. That's fine. Those two sitting down together, you know something wild is about to be said. So I clicked it. And eventually, the conversation was wide-ranging. It was about the fires in LA. It was about culture in LA and all sorts of stuff. Eventually, the conversation found its way to UFOs, UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon, whatever it is that you want to talk about, however it is you want to refer to them, and the question of the drones over New Jersey. All of these things they started talking to each other about. And guys, I got to a place with this argument that I've never been to before. I came to what I think may be a realization of what I think some of this stuff is, and it was not a conclusion that I was prepared to make or that I'm necessarily comfortable with having. But one of the things that I think is important to keep in mind when talking about both of these people, Tucker Carlson, Michael Shellenberger, both of these people are upper crust. Both of these people are tip top of the tip top, even if they are outsiders among that, about that. They are a little bit more rebellious than the upper crust is normally, but went to good universities, came from good families. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, both Michael Shellenberger and Tucker Carlson's fathers were both journalists. So they are coming from this trade and moving up in the trade to the next station from where their own fathers and family members had been. And both of them apparently know people who have read the UFO stuff. So I will never forget where I was when the original UFO, they're real talk happened. I was living in St. Charles, Missouri, working at a Walgreens, and I got I believe it was a CNN email. I used to be subscribed to the CNN email, and there was an email about, hey, Department of Defense something gives a talk on UFOs. And I figured it was just the regular BS, things that we don't really know anything about anything. This appears to have been a weather balloon, ... The talks they always give. But it wasn't the talks they always give. It was that whoever this was, I have no idea who it was now, was just sitting there saying, yeah, there's UFOs, man, and we don't know what they are. This stuff is wild, but we have no idea where it came from. And it was like, at that time, this was, I believe, 2014. At that time, that was the most you'd ever gotten. Everything was so tight-lipped about this stuff before then that just nobody, it was just, there was so little actual talk from people in positions of power about this stuff that it just fueled the kind of rumor mill about what was going on. Now, all of them want to talk about it. The very fact that two people like Tucker Carlson and Michael Shellenberger are sitting down at a table having a genuine conversation about whether or not these are extraterrestrials is insane to someone who has been around this type of stuff as long as I have. I was born in 1985. We were going to garage sales in the 90s, and my mother was buying me all of these books about UFOs and aliens and paranormal, extraterrestrial, dot, 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 dot. Right? So at that time, that was the only way you could get that information. You were buying secondhand books at garage sales. The fact that two people as prevalent as the guy who Tucker Carlson was the biggest name on network television before Fox fired him. Maybe you love him, maybe you hate him, maybe you don't like him at all. Doesn't matter. He was the name. He was the biggest ratings draw. Millions of people love them some Tucker Carlson. That guy, a guy that prevalent, that prominent, sitting at a table and talking about, hey, are these things extraterrestrial? And he doesn't think they are. From what I understand, I don't think he went too far into what he believes, but I've heard him say it before. From what I understand, he doesn't believe they're extraterrestrial. He believes they're from here. He believes they are something different than that, which I will talk about in a little bit. But they both, from their places in the upper crust, they both know people who have seen the UFO files. And one of the things that they both said in that interview, was that everyone they know that has seen this stuff is very disturbed by it. But that's kind of a tell in and of itself, if you ask me. They also mentioned how, with the drone situation, and maybe, like the conversation gets a little bit shady at moments there, but I believe they suggest that even with the UFO stuff, they said that they think Trump knows about it, and he's just pretty nonchalant. I think that's a really big tell, too, if you think about some of the things that Trump has really railed against. When you're talking about something like these UFOs, these UAPs, the automatic kind of assumption is that it is hostile, right? It's not talking to us, or is it? It's not talking to me, that's for sure. So I think that when you get into that situation, there is some assumption that there's a problem brewing, right? We don't know what this is. Well, if Trump's nonchalant about it, what it kind of suggests to me is that whatever it is feeds into one of his narratives of who the bad guys are. Trump being nonchalant about this information suggests that's what I figured. So basically, in these conversations, and there's a lot more people like Michael Shellenberger and Tucker Carlson having these conversations lately, there's three kind of ideas or possibilities that spring up time and again, and I think they're all wrong. The first one is another government. Is this China? Maybe the drones, but the UAP, the UFOs, for 70 years, China's been that developed technologically? I don't think so. Is it Iran? Well, that's the same question. For 70 years? Is it anybody else? Does anyone else hate us that much that we credit enough to believe they have that kind of technology? Maybe the UAE. I don't think Russia was very quick behind us with the nuclear technology. I don't think they've been that close behind us on a technology since. Well, the space race, I guess. Yeah, that makes sense. That was after. But kind of that was clumped together, right? The space race and nuclear technology and stuff was kind of all beginning and ending with each other. So the question came up on this podcast, this interview, as often is it NHI, non-human intelligence? Is it aliens? I think if it was aliens, if it was extraterrestrials, people from other planets, other solar system, other galaxies, the people who have read the files would be a little bit more than perturbed. They wouldn't be upset by it. They'd be freaking the F out. That's how I feel about that. Especially the further back you go. We've kind of been tempered into accepting that all sorts of wacky stuff is real, right? Going back, I don't think people would have been able to keep that secret. I just don't. Then there's what Tucker believes, at least what I believe Tucker believes. Tucker thinks that it's something spiritual. I believe I have heard Tucker Carlson say he thinks it's demons. Hey, when we're having the conversation about whether or not people are traveling cross-stellar to come here and meet us, and then drive a tic-tac around and zoom back to outer space, the question of whether or not these things are demons, that's not all that weird anymore, right? Whatever you believe. But here's the thing I have with that. If this was spiritual, okay, so let's go through these one by one and really kind of go through them. The idea that it's another government. The only real threat to this that I can see in the world today, maybe it's the UAE, maybe, okay? But other than that, it would be China, right? Well, in the world of engineering, there is a very funny quote about China. In the world of marketing, there's a very funny quote about China. In the world of business, there's a very funny quote about China. You know, R&D in the business world, research and development. You want to build a phone, you're Apple, you want to build a phone, you do research on phones, and you start developing your phone. Very expensive. It is a money plug. It is a money drain, pardon me. And companies go through this. Every company allots a certain amount of money to R&D, research and develop. The big joke about China is, in China, R&D stands for receive and duplicate. Most of their major technologies are not their technologies. Right now, most of their major technologies come from other places, and they reverse engineer them. Now, I say this with full respect of the Chinese people. The Chinese people are incredible people. It's the government that's tamping them down. So I don't think it's any other government. But therein lies the problem. I used the word other government. Is it possible that this is a black ops program inside the United States government? Well, here's the thing with that. If it was an inside job, a black ops government type deal, would the intel people who have read the files really be perturbed about it? Wouldn't they be absolutely stoked that, yeah, we've got this thing under wraps? We have this ace in the hole? That would make sense to me, not that they would be upset. Well, what about NHI, non-human intelligence? Little green men, little gray men from other stars. I think that level of secret is something that would cause people to self-delete. If you were tasked with keeping that secret, I don't know that you could. And that would be more than, hey, the intel guys I know, this rubs them the wrong way. So there's one last one there. There's the supernatural or spiritual. Are these demons? Here's the question I have to that. Say you're a Christian. Most of the country is. You are in intel. Very little of the country is. You were told face to face, these are demons. This confirms your faith completely, and not only are you not going to tell anyone about it, something that they would maybe need for salvation, but you are going to keep it a secret, and you are going to make them look dumb. You are going to deny that reality. Well, put yourself in the shoes of that Christian. Who do you fear? Do you fear your government or your God? All of a sudden, you're told that your God is real, and you have to deny him. No. Those people will tell the truth and accept the consequences, because whatever consequences your government can put you through, they are not forever. So what is it? Right? Those are really the only three options that kind of come up, and who's to say that powerful groups of people are called governments? I have never been on this side of the argument before. Never. Why don't we know anything about that guy who definitely did not self-delete, and you're not supposed to ever say his name in social media? You're not supposed to say his name on YouTube. Why don't we know anything about him? Because there are powerful people who say we're not allowed to. Is that a government? I don't think necessarily. Is it the Illuminati? I think that's closer to the right track. Here's another question. I don't know if you follow Eric Weinstein. Eric Weinstein has been very perturbed by the whole "he who shall not be offed by himself" story. And he says he'd met him a couple times. Yeah. For some reason, that guy was super interested in physics. Super interested in physics? That's kind of weird. What was he doing with physics? He was just a trafficker, right? But for some reason, he was super interested in scientists. Not the most common party boys. You don't hear a whole lot about party boys that are also, well, I mean, there was Einstein, but party boys who are also physicists. You don't hear about that. So how is it that this guy who was, from what we know, a trafficker, so interested in scientists? What if it's not a government to whom these Tic Tacs and UAPs belong? What if it's just a group of powerful people? A group of powerful people who can make something like that guy disappear, sweep him under the rug, ruin his name forever in the process. What if it's not a government that has these black ops programs? What if they're hosted in random islands across the world? Maybe man-made islands across the world. Something which would be far too expensive for you and I. Something which would be, indeed, cost prohibitive for most governments across the world. And where it's not cost prohibitive, there are the questions of ethics for governments, but not for powerful groups of powerful people. What if that is what we're looking at? powerful people, groups of powerful people, secret societies and such. I have never really been one to believe in skull and crossbones and Illuminati and all this stuff. Never really have. Never really have. It just seemed to me it was a bunch of rich folk getting together and wanting to look cool amongst each other. But if we're being told that UAPs, UFOs, are real things, and some people know what they are, and their largest concession is that they're just really bummed about it, that tells me that it's not something off the map. It's something hidden under the page. So anyway, those are my thoughts, my latest thoughts on what these things might be. A little disappointing that it's not Little Green Men, but whatever.